All right, welcome. Today, we are diving into a really powerful mathematical language that is kind of quietly reshaping how we understand, well, almost everything, from artificial intelligence all the way to the human brain. It's called category theory, and it's basically giving us a brand new blueprint for the world's most complex systems.
So let me ask you this. What could machine learning, game theory, and the human brain possibly have in common? I mean, on the surface, they seem like they're from completely different universes, right? But what if I told you they all share a hidden, fundamental structure? A kind of common language that describes how they work and interact? Well, that's exactly what we're going to unpack today.
So, here's our game plan. We're going to start with the classic science of cybernetics. Then, we'll dig into a major challenge it faced. And you'll see how category theory comes in as this revolutionary solution. After that, we'll look at some incredible real-world applications and what all of this means for the future.
Okay, let's start our journey with a field called cybernetics. If you've ever been curious about the actual science behind control and communication, this is it. This is ground zero.
You know, at its heart, cybernetics is really the science of steering. And it's not just about machines. This applies to any system that uses information to keep itself on track. The key idea here is the feedback loop. Think about it. A system senses its environment, it acts, it sees the result of that action, and then it adjusts what it does next. That's cybernetics in a nutshell.
And the sheer breadth of what a cybernetic system can be is just incredible. You got the classic examples, of course, like a thermostat keeping your room at the right temperature or an airplane's autopilot. But the modern stuff, that's where it gets really exciting. We're talking about AI models that actually learn, complex economic games, and even theories for how our own brains work.
But for a long time, system science had this huge hurdle. You know, it was one thing to understand a simple thermostat. It's a whole other ballgame to understand how really complex systems are built from all these smaller parts interacting.
Right, because you can't understand a complex system just by looking at its components in a vacuum. A single neuron by itself doesn't make a brain, right? A single rule doesn't create an entire market. The real magic and the real challenge is in modeling how all these little pieces connect, how they talk to each other, and how they compose to create a functioning whole.
And this chart really nails the shift in thinking that had to happen. The old way was to treat systems kind of like these closed-off black boxes. But the new challenge demanded a framework for systems that are open, systems that are constantly interacting with their environment, and that are built by snapping smaller systems together. This is what's known as the compositionality challenge.
So how do you solve a problem like that? Well, you need a new language. And that's where category theory comes in. Now, look, don't let the name intimidate you. It's way less about complicated equations and much more about a universal set of building blocks. Think of them like Legos for describing any system you can possibly imagine.
This quote from a really important paper gets right to the heart of it. Researchers realized that category theory was the perfect tool for the job. It was what they needed to build a framework that could model these crucial two-way interactions. It lets us describe not just the system itself, but also how it's connected to and steered by everything around it.
So, let me show you how simple the basic idea is. In category theory, first you have objects. These are just things. A system, a dataset, a component, whatever. Think of it as one single Lego brick. Then you have morphisms. These are the relationships or the processes that connect those things. This is literally how the Lego bricks snap together. And finally, you have composition. These are the rules of the game, the system for how those connections can be combined to build bigger, more complex structures. That's it. It's a language of dots and arrows, of things and the processes between them.
So, now that we have this amazing new language, we can finally start building rigorous models of those really complex cybernetic systems we were talking about earlier. This is where theory meets application.
And these are not just some abstract theoretical ideas, okay? This categorical framework is actively being used right now to unify some seriously cutting-edge fields. Machine learning, game theory, neuroscience, they're all finding a common mathematical foundation right here.
Let's take machine learning, for example. We can finally stop treating a learning algorithm like it's some sort of magical black box. Using category theory, we can model it precisely as an open learner, a system that's interacting with both a controller, like the gradient descent algorithm pushing it, and the data environment it's learning from. It all becomes clear.
And we see the same power over in neuroscience. There's this theory called active inference, which basically proposes our brain is a prediction machine, constantly working through bidirectional feedback. Well, as it turns out, category theory provides the perfect mathematical structure to formally describe exactly that kind of process. It just fits.
And if you're wondering just how new all this is, get this. A key paper from 2020 was literally titled Cyber Kittens. I'm not kidding. The name itself just tells you this is a young, playful, and super fast-growing field. The kitten is growing up, and it's becoming a very powerful category.
So what does this all mean? Where is all of this heading? Well, it's about finding nothing less than a universal blueprint.
I mean, think about it. For the first time, we have a single, rigorous language to talk about the structure of interaction in almost any field imaginable. So instead of having separate theories for biology and economics and computing, we can now see the common principles they're all built on. It's a fundamental language for how things connect.
And this leads us to a final, pretty fascinating question. If you have a universal set of Legos that can be used to model a brain, or an AI, or an entire market, what new kinds of structures will we be able to design? What secrets about the interconnected nature of our world are we finally going to unlock? The blueprint is in our hands. The real question is, what are we going to build with it?